This video will reveal Machiavelli's hacks to control any woman, not with gifts, not with endless chasing, but with psychology so sharp it rewires how she sees you. By the end, you'll know why most men are forgotten, and how to become the rare man who cannot be erased from her mind. These are not tricks or pickup lines. They are principles used for centuries to command respect, desire, and even obsession. And once you understand them, you'll never look at love or power the same way again. Men are taught from childhood to win women's affection through offerings, gifts, good manners, humor, or the pursuit of physical beauty. But this path is precisely why so many men fade into irrelevance. They are pleasant for a moment, but soon forgotten. Niccolò Machiavelli, peering into the human soul centuries ago, recognized what most still refuse to accept. The true aim is not to be merely liked, it is to become unforgettable. And that is never achieved by constant giving. It is achieved by controlling what lingers in her mind when your presence vanishes. Here lies his first and most unsettling principle. It is safer to be feared than loved. To the modern ear, this sounds harsh, perhaps even villainous. But Machiavelli was not prescribing cruelty for its own sake. He was describing the reality of human nature. Love is treasured when it feels uncertain, when it is scarce and costly. But when it flows endlessly without boundary, it weakens, then evaporates. Love, when it becomes routine, loses its edge. It becomes background music, pleasant but ignorable. And the tragedy is that most men believe the answer is to give more, to open further, to become softer still. Yet the more freely love is given, the less weight it carries. Fear, when properly understood, is not about violence, shouting, or threats. That is the theater of insecure men who mistake aggression for authority. A woman senses this weakness instantly. True fear is quieter. It emerges when a man's standards are so firm that they need no explanation. He does not argue over disrespect. He does not beg to be valued. He does not lose himself trying to convince her of his worth. Instead, he withdraws. He vanishes without anger, and the silence itself becomes a teacher. That silence unsettles more than any outburst could, because it leaves her with nothing to fight, nothing to resist. The great Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one in the context of relationships." This truth becomes even sharper. A man who embodies unshakable self-respect does not need to broadcast it. His actions declare it. When she realizes he will not bend his standards to keep her, when she feels that his values are not for sale, she understands something rare: she cannot control him. And that realization awakens a different emotion. Not casual attraction, but obsession. Absence, then, becomes the most powerful weapon. Consider how Alexander the Great commanded loyalty from his soldiers. It was not merely his charisma or victories, but the knowledge that if they faltered, he would leave them behind without hesitation. His standards were absolute, and his men feared losing his regard more than they feared their enemies. Translate this into the personal. A woman may adore your company. She may laugh at your jokes. She may even whisper that she loves you. But if she never feels that losing you is possible, her affection will grow lazy. When a man teaches through action that his respect cannot be bought with flattery or comfort, he becomes the exception she cannot dismiss. Machiavelli's insight is not an attack on love. It is a warning. Without respect rooted in fear of loss, love becomes hollow. If you are always present, always available, always forgiving, then you are also always replaceable. But when she knows that crossing your boundary means silence, when she senses that your absence is the price of disrespect, she begins to fight for your presence. That is not cruelty. It is psychological gravity. Remember this. She does not obsess over the man who gave endlessly. She obsesses over the one who did not need her affection to remain whole. She remembers the man who could leave without flinching, the man whose silence was louder than speeches. And once you embody that presence, you shift from being an option among many to being the turning point she measures all others against. This is the power of fear over love.
The second principle is no less sharp than the first. Image always outweighs reality. Machiavelli once wrote, "It is not necessary for a prince to be truly good, but it is essential to appear so." This single observation dismantles one of the greatest illusions men are raised with. From the time we are young, we are told to be honest, loyal, hardworking, and patient, with the promise that these virtues will be recognized and rewarded. But reality proves different. The world does not see the depths of your loyalty, the complexity of your intelligence, or the sincerity of your heart. It sees only what you present. A man can be wise, kind, and gifted with noble character, yet if he enters a room with timid posture, unsteady voice, or anxious energy, his worth goes unnoticed. This truth is even more powerful in attraction. For women, desire does not begin with a list of facts, it begins with perception. She's not tallying your resume in her mind, she is scanning how she feels in your presence. What do her instincts tell her when you walk into the room? Is your voice anchored or wavering? Do you hold yourself with calm command or restless uncertainty? Attraction is less about what you are and more about what she experiences when near you. This is why men who speak endlessly about their virtues are forgotten, while men who remain silent yet radiate presence are remembered. People do not respond to objective truth, they respond to what feels true. Kierkegaard once said, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." Women, in their perception, live forwards. They react not to the full truth of your character, but to the slice of it they feel in the moment. This is why the game is not about deceiving, but about framing. If you do not control the frame, she will unconsciously assign one to you based on her biases, her past wounds, her moods. Without your active shaping, you become the product of her imagination rather than your own design. The power lies in mystery. Desire thrives where imagination is forced to fill the gaps. Show enough of yourself to ground her, but never the entire picture. Reveal strength. Reveal a glimpse of warmth, but let silence hold the rest. A woman will often imagine far more than you reveal, and in doing so, she makes you larger in her mind than life. This is why oversharing kills attraction. When a man explains every detail, answers every question, pours out his history, he becomes predictable. Predictability erases tension, and tension is the oxygen of desire. Think of great leaders and artists. Why did someone like James Dean or Marilyn Monroe linger in cultural memory? Not only for their talent, but for the aura of mystery they carried. What they withheld was as magnetic as what they revealed. Nietzsche once remarked, "All great things must first wear terrifying and monstrous masks in order to inscribe themselves on the hearts of humanity." That mask is image. It is not falsehood, but the necessary veil that keeps others searching, wondering, leaning forward. In relationships, the man who controls his image is never reduced to her pet project. He becomes the puzzle she cannot complete. When you feel anger, do not explode, speak with controlled fire. When you feel uncertainty, stand as if rooted in certainty. When you feel the urge to chase, stop and wait. Because stillness is its own display of strength. In stillness is presence. In presence is power. And in power, she senses something rare, a man she cannot fully map. This is not about pretense. You are not inventing a character you cannot sustain. You are learning to reveal strategically, to show only what strengthens your presence and to let silence hold the rest. You allow the imagination to do the work for you, and in doing so, you become far more than a man with virtues. You become an enigma, and enigmas are never forgotten. In a world where everyone overshares and begs to be understood, the one who frames himself carefully, who lets his mystery grow, becomes magnetic. And in the eyes of a woman, he is no longer just another man. He is the man she cannot quite explain, but cannot stop circling in her thoughts.
The third principle is one of Machiavelli's most enduring lessons. A man must be both lion and fox. Power alone is not enough. Cunning alone is not enough. It is the fusion of strength and intelligence, force and subtlety, that makes a man untouchable. Every woman will test you, not always with words, but with behaviors designed to probe for weakness. She may grow cold, then suddenly warm again. She may contradict herself, shifting tones and signals without explanation. Most men assume confusion. They try to fix things with words. They apologize. They plead. And in that instant, they collapse. For she does not need clarity of speech. She needs proof of solidity. Machiavelli's metaphor shows us why. The lion embodies raw strength, the refusal to bow, the unflinching boundary. He does not chase, does not explain, does not bend. He simply stands, and his presence communicates what no words can. The fox represents intelligence, patience, and the refusal to be baited. The fox watches silently, avoids traps, and chooses the moment of action with precision. Together, lion and fox create an unpredictable figure, strong enough not to be shaken, clever enough not to be outplayed. History provides countless illustrations of this balance. Alexander the Great was revered not only for his battlefield courage, the lion, but also for his ability to outmaneuver enemies with cunning strategies, the fox. In politics, Winston Churchill displayed the same duality, fiery in speeches, but shrewd and calculating in negotiations. What women seek, often unconsciously, is this very mixture. A man who is only lion becomes noise, explosive, intimidating perhaps, but easy to provoke. A man who is only fox becomes hollow, charming, clever, but lacking the spine to lead. When both traits converge, a tension emerges. She cannot predict you, and unpredictability is one of the deepest roots of attraction. So how does this appear in practice? When she lashes out emotionally, be the fox. Remain still, listen, observe. Let her storm crash against the calm of your silence. When she crosses a line of respect, be the lion, not with raised voice or threats, but with a stillness that communicates finality. This is my boundary, and I will not move. She will sense it not in what you say, but in what you refuse to compromise, and that sense will breed respect. But Machiavelli's third principle carries another layer, often ignored. Divide and conquer. While rulers applied this to nations, it applies equally to human psychology. You do not conquer a woman's certainty by force. You create subtle fractures in it. You do not need to dismantle her beliefs outright. All you need is a seed of doubt. If she says, "I despise jealous men," and you respond with a calm, "That's what you think," you create a tiny crack. She may laugh it off, but later her mind returns. What did he mean? Do I truly believe that? Why did it stay with me? This is the genius of the fox at work. You do not argue. You do not impose. You create uncertainty, and uncertainty keeps her mind circling. Certainty closes the book. Doubt keeps the pages open. Most men rush to agree with her to win approval, but in doing so, they seal their own irrelevance. Agreement breeds safety, and safety breeds boredom. Doubt breeds tension, and tension is the soil of obsession. Think of how Socrates operated in Athens. He rarely declared. He questioned. His gift was not in giving answers, but in planting seeds that forced others to wrestle with themselves. His students were drawn not to his certainty, but to the questions that haunted them after he walked away. You must do the same. When you create that inner division in her, you live in her thoughts without even speaking. The third principle, then, is mastery of duality. Strength when necessary, subtlety when wise. Division not to destroy, but to destabilize. A man who is both lion and fox, who plants quiet fractures in certainty and stands immovable in boundary, becomes something rare. He is not merely loved, not merely feared. He is studied, wondered about, replayed in her thoughts long after he has gone silent. The fourth principle is one of Machiavelli's most counterintuitive, yet most powerful. Control is not exercised by constant presence, but through absence. He once advised rulers that injuries must be inflicted all at once, while benefits should be granted little by little, translated into relationships. This becomes a psychological law. When your boundary is crossed, you do not argue, lecture, or plead. You remove yourself swiftly and completely. The absence becomes the punishment, and because it arrives without warning, without explanation, it leaves her mind unsettled. Silence leaves her with no opponent to resist, no target for her defiance. Instead, she is left alone with her own questions, her own unease. This absence weighs more heavily than words ever could. She replays the last interaction, searching for clues. She wonders what she did, whether she pushed too far, and whether you are gone for good. The silence becomes a mirror in which she sees her actions reflected more brutally than any speech you could have given. And then, when the time is right, you return, not with grand displays, but with subtle, controlled rewards, a glance, a half smile, a quiet compliment, not enough to satisfy her, but enough to remind her of your presence. This uneven rhythm, swift punishment, slow reward, creates the tension of a game she cannot master. It is the same psychological pattern that makes casinos addictive. The uncertainty of the next win keeps the player at the table. In relationships, it keeps her at the edge of her seat, waiting for the next glimpse of warmth. Modern men often reverse this pattern. They punish too often, with words and complaints. They reward too quickly, showering affection in hopes of securing loyalty. The result is predictable. Their power evaporates. Machiavelli's fourth principle demands restraint. Inflict the injury once and decisively, through absence, and then distribute your rewards slowly, sparingly, as treasures that must be earned. Pain delivered in one stroke is remembered. Pleasure given in doses is craved. But absence carries another dimension. It transforms you from a man into a question. If you are always available, you become ordinary, predictable. But when you disappear without drama, without explanation, you become larger than life in her imagination. The female mind cannot resist filling a void. She replays every word, every glance, every silence, trying to decode the mystery. You haunt her thoughts not by presence, but by vanishing. And when you return, calm and unchanged, you confirm her deepest suspicion that you do not need her approval to remain whole. History shows the same pattern. Consider Napoleon and Josephine. When he pursued her obsessively, she grew distant. But when his focus shifted toward empire and conquest, when his presence grew scarce, her devotion sharpened. It was his absence that made him loom larger in her memory, not his gifts or word. Likewise, in literature, Shakespeare's tragic figures often reveal that what torments the heart most is not rejection, but uncertainty. When the beloved withdraws without closure, the unknown gnaws deeper than the known. Sigmund Freud once observed that emotional memory shapes desire. We crave what has marked us most deeply. Absence is precisely that mark. It lingers not as a detail, but as a haunting. She may forget the dozens of men who texted her daily, who never left her guessing. But she will not forget the man whose silence unsettled her, the man who forced her to see herself through the mirror of his absence. That memory does not fade, because it reshapes her story. And this is the heart of the fourth principle. Become her turning point. You are not remembered as just another lover, another companion. You are remembered as the moment when her story shifted. Perhaps you were the first man who refused to beg, the first who set a boundary and enforced it with silence, the first who did not return when respect was denied. That moment becomes the axis around which her memory spins. She may move on, she may laugh, she may even forget your name aloud. But in her secret mind, she will never forget the version of herself that emerged after you. In that memory, you live as gravity, not as entertainment. And gravity does not chase, it pulls. If these words have stirred something within you, it is because you already sensed the truth. You are finished with pleading for attention, finished with trading your presence for scraps of validation. You are ready to embody gravity. If you feel that shift, leave one word below. Control, not for me, but as your own declaration that you are done with the old game. And if you are prepared to go deeper, to master silence, absence, and the psychology of unforgettable presence, subscribe now and watch the next video.